Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fintech Combine. My name is Anson, and I'm actually the producer of this podcast. I'm normally behind one of these cameras, but today we have an extra special episode for you because Kris is actually on location with Jamie Jackson from Arkatechture, and so I'm super pumped to bring this episode to you all. And with that said, if you do like the content with this episode, make sure to check out our audio platforms and even LinkedIn for some bonus material from today's episode. So if you're ready for this extra special episode of the podcast, let's suit up and get out in the field.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fintech Combine. I am your host, Kris Kovacs, and on this very special episode of the show, we are in Hawaii at the Volunteer Leadership Institute, and this is Mr. Jamie Jackson with me, CEO of Arkatechture, fabulous fintech, and we just got off stage talking with credit unions about the future of really the future of credit unions, right? Digital, the future of lots of different things. So Jamie, why don't we start off though and have you tell our viewers a little bit about you and about Arkatechture.
Sure, sounds good. So founder of Arkatechture. Arkatechture itself started as a company that just did end-to-end data solutions for companies of all shapes and sizes about 12 years ago. So when you can start doing the math, when you're like approaching a third of your life as opposed to just a fourth of your life, you start to then feel what that means. But really stumbled into the credit union space about 6 years ago and just saw an industry and an opportunity to really have an impact. We build end-to-end data solutions, but when we saw the opportunity with the credit unions, really underserved as far as the vendor options that are out there, confusion around kind of what data means and the ability to kind of execute on that. So that's when we launched our product, Arkelytics, where we brought that to market. Bootstrap company, self-funded our own R&D through professional services to bring Arkelytics to market. And then we saw the whole collaborative co-opetition that existed with the credit unions and said, hey man, we got to go for this. So had that as an opportunity to scale. Formed a QSO, went down that path, similar to yourselves, and haven't looked back since. So Arkelytics is the product and the platform, Arkatechture is the company. Have to make sure I get that out of the way so that when I start speaking about something, I'm not talking about another company altogether. But obviously on the marketing side, we didn't have too much of a marketing department when we made our product Arkelytics with the company of Arkatechture. So maybe
we're still struggling to name some things. I don't know if that's inherent in all startups where you're so focused on the product, you forget to kind of like, we should name this thing.
Yeah, it's either you go to your roots of like, what transformer name will I have this for the code name of my project? And then, we can't call it that. Or what do you call it? And then you start to get into all the symbolism of every single word and never find anything. So we just add Linux at the end, or Arkabots for the people, Arkaport for our office because it's in Portland. So yeah, not too creative in that front.
Very cool, very cool. So how do credit unions use your platform?
Various ways. So again, when we started, we thought we'll be able to kind of launch them into all the predictive analytics, the machine learning and AI, and not quite the geeking out that we talked about today at that level when we entered the market. But really saw an industry that didn't have the basis, didn't have the baseline. So we really kind of speak to the journey of how to kind of transform yourself to reactive, to proactive, to predictive. And really every credit union comes in with finding a different starting point from there. So early on, and you know this better than I do, we're like, hey, here's our product. You don't need us. Well, let us know if you need some help. That is not the way this industry works. And when you switch from like a professional services engagement to a SaaS engagement, you don't want to be that guy that, I'm double dipping, right? I'm like charging you on the services side and charge you on the product side. But then that's when the credit unions came running to us like, you're handing us keys to a Lamborghini, we have no idea how to drive this car.
Yes.
So that was a great kind of moment for us where we started to understand like the partnership that they're looking for. And it's been awesome. Sometimes it's getting the operational inefficiencies out, getting the tactical dashboards, self-service to the credit unions doesn't mean they want to be able to necessarily create everything themselves, but they need to be able to interact with data in a meaningful way. So the way we built the platform is essentially, not to get into the geeky details, but like a data lake house. It's a whole serverless kind of framework where the raw, untransformed data, we have the conformed data, we bring it all together as a single source of truth. We run our data quality rules engines, we have our predictive analytics, we have the out-of-the-box dashboards and models, and then we have our data hub kind of feature, which is how do we then bolt on and integrate other fintechs so that they can leverage the same single source of truth. So does everyone have the same playbook? No, but what we started to uncover is like, hey, that roadmap and strategy that we need to kind of build into you and that governance that we need to develop, doing that up front and really giving them conviction, like, hey, we're making an investment of this. We need to have the results and the ROI of this. And really kind of building kind of training materials and adoption materials for them in each of the departments. So we didn't focus on just the executives or just the worker bees. It's really meant to be a wide and deep platform, which can be great or overwhelming, depending on who the users are. But really made sure we moved at their pace of understanding. And I just, the results to see somebody that didn't know anything about BI or AI or predictive and then using it on a day-to-day basis has been awesome. So we've woven in lots of additional kind of like services that we provide and other products that we've partnered with other fintechs as well.
We talked a lot this morning around talent and having the right talent. Does a credit union need to have an analytics team to use your service or effectively use your service? Or is it something you can train them on?
Yeah, and so both, but I don't know, you called it out perfectly, with the kind of who you're going after in the accounting department. So they don't need a team. So their augmented team. They can rely for us in totality. But then I, like you as like a technologist, I would never buy a black box that I couldn't also kind of co-author, right?
No.
So there's no way in hell we were going to launch a product and platform that was going to limit and restrict where you have to use us.
Right.
So that's where we can introduce that concept of them doing their own or co-authoring or co-collaborating on their own kind of development, our platform as well, and where they may need resources temporarily, long term. We even help kind of recruit and train and hire some of the talent on the credit side of things. So it's a journey that ebbs and flows, and you got to see what happened during the pandemic where the great resignation and the talent suck that even happened even further where folks in the credit unions were being sucked away by companies in the valley, which who would have thought that would have happened. But then the investment that they do make on the talent side of things, they don't need the full stack, right? Like a data team can be really wide and really deep, but that kind of domain expertise and infusing that transformation into the business, we focus them there, and oftentimes you see like a whole new career of somebody that was in the PMO or someone that was an analyst in marketing or lending, and you see them like their eyes just bubble up, and the ideas that they have because they have that carnal domain tribal knowledge of
it's really important.
Oh my gosh, you can't teach that in a training material.
That's right.
That's something you have to acquire over time.
That's right. Yeah. I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, where do I get talent from? And they said, well, should I go to my university and hire a kid out of school? And I said, there's a twofold problem with that. One, data's starting to move so quickly, right? That it could a graduate who just did 4 years at the university level in a pre-described, pre-designed program be ready to use the tools of today, right? And they may not know enough about your business. Right? That really you may be best served by having somebody in the organization train them up on how to use it, and then once you get to a certain level, really marry it up with just a heavy hitter from an analytics perspective.
Absolutely, and you're right, because even investing in that talent, a kid out of school, now I have all the skills and expertise to go someplace else and make double the money potentially. So yeah, I always try to focus it internally to see what they have there. And what's bizarre about the world we live in now too is like, you might have 3 months experience in a technology and be a foremost expert, right? Because it just came out 3 months ago.
That's right.
And it is evolving so quickly, so.
Yeah, you can't have 10 years of experience using ChatGPT at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
So, how do credit unions use your service? Like, what are some demonstrable things that have moved the needle for some of your clients that if a credit union is sitting there today and thinking about it, they would say, you know what, that's me, I need that, I need to reach out to Jamie?
Yeah, part of I'll stay on the simple tactical and go to more of the strategic and the higher ROI, but BI, when we first kind of came into the space, to most organizations when we met with them, it was really glorified lists that they were creating. And they would have some talent there of an analyst, and that analyst is not working on any strategic dashboards at all. They're just building another list that then they're handing over to marketing or to collections or lending. And then that's turning into an Excel spreadsheet with pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, and then hand it off to somebody else. So even just giving the ability for self-service and access to data in an unlimited, unrestricted fashion, but governed and controlled with having definitions and accountability, there's a lot that kind of goes into that. Of even, it's mentioned today, an active membership definition.
Right.
Marketing
what is a member?
They have their definition. there's a lot of work and sometimes frustrating kind of conversations that you get two departments together and they completely disagree.
Right.
And no one's making a decision, but you have to come to a decision and a consensus there. But then from that, you have the foundational, this is the definition, you are the owner for this, you're the steward for this, you're the one responsible for defining this, and then you go from there. Because if you don't have that, like, how many board presentations have you been part of where one person has one number, another person has another number, and they never get to a resolution? And then the same thing happens the following quarter.
I'm not going to say anything, but I've seen 3 different delinquency numbers get reported.
Exactly, and then you have the 5300th call report, and then you find discrepancy there. Oh, we've got another quarter to kind of catch up and address that. So you have that aspect of things. Then you have more of the predictive analytics. So hey, we'll start the way we start with our kind of journey on the predictive side of things, because often they're like, we need predictive. It's like, what does that mean to you? So doing a member segmentation. Hey, here are the CU enthusiasts. Here are those that you want to spend a little bit more time on. All members are important, but some are more important to speak to and talk to on a more constant basis. So doing a segmentation, running through an attrition model to say, hey, these are likely to leave, and what are some next best products you can kind of put out front of them. That's like a good foundation of like more of the predictive side of things to get them going with now their marketing automation and their campaigns that they're starting. And there's a lot of work. Like now you start to insert marketing automation platforms and CRM platforms, which people. Do
you work with the credit union in those cases, or do you work directly with the fintech?
So we'll work with both. So like, say we're independent of any fintech as far as kind of like the definition, the data warehouse, kind of data model that supports that. But then, I mean, oftentimes, with all these different fintechs that are around in the ecosystem, that same conversation around active member, you might have 14 different versions of that now in 14 different locations, or how are you managing that? So centralizing that logic and then backing in and then bolting a fintech on top of it. We talked a little bit earlier with a gentleman that was talking about kind of integrations. Like we will get to a point of like zero integrations at some point. So more and more data sharing opportunities are coming from the vendors that you're working with, but you got to have that kind of single source of truth, the puzzle pieces coming together to build that kind of 360.
That's so true. In some fintechs, I mean, we've experienced a little bit of this. If the person building the data model could be really great at data, could be really great at your solution, but may not necessarily know how that fits into the credit union data model. Like you could end up in 2 very different places.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are domains, like we have a credit union data model. I mean, that is how we build it. And I came from the star schema, Ralph Kimball sort of kind of background versus the Bill Inman third normal form sort of approach. But then we flattened it. Like the technologies that are out there, you don't need traditional star schemas for performance basis, but the concept of organizing it around what business purposes it's solving is still present, and you still need to have those disciplines to make it easier for the business to interact with and engage with and understand.
In your typical engagement with a credit union, how long does it take for them to start seeing some results?
Yeah, great question. We often we got hyper-focused that we could deploy all of our technology in a couple days.
Okay.
We'll never do that. That will never be the case.
Are you on-prem? Are you in the cloud?
Fully cloud, yep, great point. Cloud native, we were built in the cloud. That mattered to some a couple years ago where they're anti-cloud. We don't run into that challenge very much, as you're well aware as well. But we'll have them with usable stuff within a couple months. That could be days, that could be week, but part of what we incorporate into that is like a whole month of user acceptance testing. So we're bringing them into the dialogue very early on to define all the kind of the attributes. Hey, here's how we see the industry. How do you see your institute? Is it slightly different as far as that definition goes? So we lead them with example and some, and then they can kind of factor in. Our model stays the same. That's how we kind of scale up, and we don't get into custom model here, custom model there, and then all our content builds on. And from there, like bring in Source One, their core, their origination system, their online banking platform, their marketing automation, their CRM, their HR. So you kind of start walking them through the phases in the journey. And you're really just anchoring to like what are the highest levels of ROI or the areas that they're looking to kind of get around. Because if you don't prove value quickly enough, you'll get non-believers or why am I spending this? And I don't blame anybody for that. Like we should all see value quickly, and then trusting with it as well. Part of why that user acceptance testing is so important. It's like everyone in the business, well, not everyone in the business, but all the people that are responsible, the stewards, they're going to sign off on this so that no one shows up to the board meeting, oh, I don't trust that report because it's different than what I believe in. It's like, now we have that out early on, and then you have the whole momentum of the organization moving together thereafter.
So you were a successful fintech who stumbled into QSOs,
Yep.
or stumbled into credit unions
Yep,
and
and then
became a
into
QSO.
Yep.
So what's the, from your perspective, kind of the relative value trade-offs of becoming a QSO when you're already a successful fintech?
Yeah. I mean, we saw it, not to say the money aspect, the capital wasn't important.
Sure.
But it wasn't the number one motivator for us. I mean,
Right.
ironically, when we first entered the space, they're like, oh, well, you're a banking company. And it's like, all right, we came from the banking world, so we understand just the general kind of credit life cycle, the customer life cycle. And you have to work your way and get that trust in the credit union space. So we saw a tremendous opportunity, and we wanted to accelerate how do we break in through some of these networks that we're not part of, right?
Right.
There is a lot of competition between credit unions, but let's say some on the other side of things are a little bit more hampered to let you in, and
Yep.
some of the moats that some organizations can put in place to prohibit fintechs to kind of come in.
Yep.
So to us, that was a tremendous strategic value of like getting kind of brand recognition and getting trust. Our model, the way we did it is we did customers only. So I had no idea what a QSO was like when we
So
first started.
to be clear then, in order to be an investor, you must be a customer.
Yeah, exactly.
You must be using, that is so important.
Yeah.
That is so important.
They have numerous investments in that, right? They have
Yeah.
the financial aspect, they have the
Yep.
involvement. Like we have so many committees that we have like content review and ideation and
Right.
first looks at things to kind of try things out. And we are pulling in our kind of credit union investors a lot. Like this is not just the financial investment, it's their time as well.
That's right.
But then for them to see the immediate return and,
right.
rapidly be able to deploy that, it's the perfect customer investor relationship. I can't imagine like that you get this sort of purity as far as like people are there with a purpose every single time you get on the phone
Right.
or start working with one another.
Right.
And I mean, those that are evaluating kind of getting into it, highly, highly recommend it. I think the flip side too is like us having to be, or us being a bootstrap organization where we didn't just learn how to like exist, we had to learn how to survive.
Right.
Like on a day-to-day basis,
That's
year
right.
over year. And our
Lean operations, moving quickly,
everything.
iterating fast.
Absolutely. Like, and our whole like the lean data principle is like when we first started is like there's a 12-step program of how to become data literate. Realistically, they only have budget for a 3-step. So we consolidated technologies. The cloud helped with that.
Yep.
It allowed us to advance, and not to kind of quote Steve Jobs, but like doing simple things is hard sometimes.
Yes.
So making it simple to understand. This is an industry that needed something like that.
Making something simple
Yeah.
is hard.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
hard work.
Yeah.
So what's the future look like for Arkatechture? Where are you going? What are you guys looking at next? Are you into AI? We had a lot of conversations today
Yeah.
about artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. So we have our rollout of how we're doing that. I mean, internalizing that as well. Like we have a service desk that people will contact and reach out to,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's issues or bumps in the night. But the majority of what they reach out is like, how do I use this, or
How do I do something?
where could I find this?
Yes.
And so one of our first use cases is capturing that, right? Like,
Right.
and how does that turn into user stories and requirement gathering to then get backlogged into our product roadmap, right?
Right.
So the way we're approaching it is internalizing our use cases, how we're rolling it out, rolling out additional kind of like, there's already NLP aspects of how you can interact with the data, but what ChatGPT has just accelerated the demand of even simplifying that.
Right.
So bringing that kind of ChatGPT experience
Right.
into the product, but then we talked about this earlier too, like the sensitivity around like, all right, kind of customer, consumer privacy information.
Yes.
So how do we isolate that? Do we do it at a summary level? We're working really closely with the credit unions themselves on what their use cases are,
Okay.
where you start to get into kind of shared liability kind of territories. They're able to do anything on their own as well, where they
Right.
can kind of author and develop,
Right.
and then we're good stewards to them as well. So we have our own internal roadmap of how we're rolling that out. And one of the ideas that kind of came up earlier too, kind of that advisor. I mean, even just, and I'm curious at how many credit union executives would actually want some of this, but imagine if the board could be asking questions on a real-time basis without having to go through someone. How interested would the executive actually be to give that access, right?
Yeah.
They may or may not be willing to do something like
Yeah.
that, but it's just really about
Give some background on the question we got, because it was a really interesting question,
was.
right? A credit union. So we're at the Volunteer Leadership Institute here in Kauai. It's beautiful. Is an annual event for credit union directors, right? And a credit union director raised his hand and said, "Can AI replace me?"
Yeah.
Right? And what we came up with was, well, maybe not replace, but could certainly help make you better.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and we were leaning like absolutely yes. There will be a use case where that does happen,
Yeah.
but it aligns to what is your mission. Like, there aren't just the objectives of being a bank, for these kind of these boards and everything like that. So there's value that's brought to them. But yeah, it was interesting. Like, that scenario, is that possible, and what would that look like, and what would that mean?
That's right.
And there are things that,
Oh, did you see that?
I didn't see it. I heard it. But
It's this giant C-130 right off the beach. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
I don't know that you guys caught it, but it was crazy.
I think you did. I saw the reflection. So maybe, depending on kind of where that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
But go ahead. We're talking about this virtual director.
Yeah, and I mean, in those meetings and in those boardrooms, like, how many conversations lead to a question? Well, I'll follow up on that as well, right? Where don't know the answer, we'll follow up on that. And that continuity of like keeping the conversation flow going doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The answers don't get made. Okay, we'll follow up on this next time, and then it's forgotten. There's not that kind of moment. So I think there is plenty of angles to infuse that in there.
There really could be.
Absolutely. And the use cases, I mean, it begs into question now how secure will the board members be around that? Like, will they ask the questions? Will they be vulnerable in a way that maybe they are today that they may not be when there's something monitoring and kind of tracking kind of what's going on?
Yeah.
But it was a
fascinating idea.
Yeah, we were talking about the use of AI in everyday business function, but then to be self-aware like that and kind of call that out was a pretty cool question.
So you are working with credit unions. Get back to Arkatechture. You are working with credit unions on early stage, how they can use AI, looking at the use cases, and understanding kind of data and tools that are available.
Yep, could be net new to the data game and data space, or it's those brands that had a legacy kind of deployment, right?
Okay.
The good old SQL Server stacks with SSRS and SAS, like, they may need to modernize. And modernizing and going from that world into the new world, you've got to relearn things.
Right.
I mean, some of the cloud data platforms that exist out there, I mean, you don't need a DBA anymore.
Right.
They have a DBA and stuff. Well, what is your use, therefore, go forward? Or would you then create something that would require my DBA presence to be there because of my job security aspect of things? So we can bring anyone that's mature on their journey or just starting their journey or curious on their journey. You've got to get to that value as quickly as possible. And then all the other kind of bells and whistles can fall into place around it. But it's cool. I mean, we've also seen credit unions that have a full team of like 10 data people on their team that are gone the next day, or that are just starting up. So that's where that partnership, and I think
those people are in such demand.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing that our customers tell us is that they see us acting as a partnership, and I think that's what I take the most pride in. Is like, hey, we're going to be here to support you as the need for us goes up or goes down, like being that constant that they can kind of rely on.
Right.
And I mean, everyone has their securities and insecurities. I mean, it's funny. We have our data quality rules engine that just like gives a out of the box, like, all right, here's some data quality problems and issues that you have or areas to kind of focus on that might be impeding other ways you want to operate in your business. And the ones that are always very confident about like having high data quality, it's always the worst. And those that are like vulnerable and saying, oh, it's going to be horrible, actually perform better. It's such a unique situation and scenario.
There's truth to that beyond data too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure, 100%.
So if someone's interested in contacting you and learning more, where can they learn more about Arkatechture?
I mean, arkatechture.com. We're spelled differently, ARKATECHTURE.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
My wife asked me, like, how do you spell the real word architecture? And I was like,
that is the real word now.
Yeah, right? I know. And it actually worked out well. The only way we could have got better is like a double A at the beginning for like aardvark.
To show up at the very top of all searches.
But then architecture is like a word that just constantly pops. Solution architecture, data architecture. So early years, they'd look at us, I see what you did there. And it's like, I actually did not even intend to do that, but that worked out quite well. But I mean, yeah, you go to our website. I mean, that's a starting point. We've shared a little bit more information. I am not a social media proponent, for various reasons. So you will not find me in the social sphere very much.
Oh, look at this.
Which my sales organization, marketing organization hate and constantly berate me on publicly in the company.
Well, I mean, now look at this. They're going to be so proud of you. And my marketing team is the one who said to me, you're going to start this podcast.
Yeah. And that's where it needs to kind of come from. Yeah. Now, that's a really good place to start. We're involved in a lot of trade shows. We'll be at most of those. And just kind of general user groups that we kind of put on. But start at the website and you'll be able to kind of find us from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
For joining us today. Amazing discussion with Jamie Jackson of Arkatechture. Really appreciate him taking a little bit of time away from this beautiful location here in Kauai during the Volunteer Leadership Institute. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Remember to like and subscribe on the platform of your choice. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.